chart, this timeline as I call it, shows you in a visual way how you get a distribution of ship money each and every July 1st. Take a look at July 1st of 2005. That's the date when you started to receive your 05-06 ship distribution of money. Now you'll notice that you have this timeline goes 1, 2, 3 years. Even though you receive a distribution every summer, you have 3 years to spend that distribution of money. By the way, notice also as I introduce you to just a couple of concepts through this image here, notice also the terminology that I'm using. I'm noticing that at the beginning of the 05-06 state fiscal year, I received a chunk of money, what I call a distribution of money. You'll rarely hear me talk about the 04-05 funds and talk about it from the perspective of, I never talk about the 05-06 year when I'm talking about a distribution of money. The 05-06 year means that 12-month period of time that started July 1st of 2005 goes to June 30th of 2006. That's the 05-06 state fiscal year. But instead we're talking about distributions, about pots of money that we get from the SHIP program. Now you'll notice on this timeline, which indicates 5 different distributions, that the 3 in the middle are in black as opposed to the 2 colored ones that bookend them. And that's by way of demonstrating that this next September, when your ship jurisdiction turns in ship annual reports, you'll turn in annual reports for 3 distributions: 05-06, 06-07, and 07-08. Because of the timeline here, as you can see, they're staggered. You received 1, 12 months later, you receive 06-07, 12 months later, you receive 07-08. The deadlines pertaining to each of these distributions is staggered. That is to say, this September, you'll have to turn in an 05-06 closeout annual report. A report that shows that all the money has been fully expended. Why? Well, the answer lies right here on this image also. Because by this September, 1, 2, 3 years will have come and gone. This last date, representing June 30th of 2008, a date that we have not yet seen, coming up about 4 months from now. By that time, in order to comply with the 05-06 expenditure deadline, you got to have all your money expended. You've got to be able to show, of course we don't turn in our annual reports June 30th, we turn it in 2.5 months later. You'll have to show on that annual report how you've expended all those dollars. If you can't show that, the alternative is you're going to have to request an expenditure deadline extension. And it's not the most painful thing in the world, but it's not a walk through the park either. Because when you call up your funder and you say, hey, it's been more than 3 years since I've received my 05-06 money, and yet I haven't got it fully expended, you could just about imagine that the question that you're going to get is, well, when are you going to have your money expended? You'll have to be prepared when you call up there to have an explanation, to have a proposed timeline for when you think the money is going to be expended, and then you're going to have to put all of that in writing before Florida Housing will formally grant you an expenditure deadline extension. And even though they may extend it out another 6 months, they're going to make you turn in monthly status reports. I'd do the same if I were them. They want to know where you're at. As it was, they thought that 3 years was enough time for you to expend all that money. Things come up. There are legitimate reasons why people need to have expenditure deadline extensions. Not everybody who gets an expenditure deadline extension has a legitimate excuse, but they are where they are, right? I mean, they haven't expended their money. We've got to do something. We're going to take it away. We're going to shut down that whole program for the rest of eternity? No, we're going to give them a little bit more time to get the money expended. But this is a serious business. 3 years is plenty of time, given unforeseen, excluding unforeseen circumstances to expend your funds. Let's remember, though, that even though I'm focusing on the end of the 3-year period of time, there is another deadline that we have to pay attention to. Because And I'll use this last, this one right here as an example, because after receiving your 07-08 funds, you have 1 year, 2 years. By this deadline right here, that would be, you received it in summer of 07, this is 08, by June 30th of 2009, that's coming up in a year and 4 months, you have to have all of your 07-08 distribution money fully encumbered. You don't have to necessarily have it all expended by that point, but encumbered. What do I mean by encumbered? That means that you have to have all of your money committed, earmarked, designated for specific households that you will help in this next period of time, in this next 12 months, last 12 months. So this is just a slide that I use to help introduce people to this concept that on every year, on a regular basis, when you're turning in annual reports, you're not turning in one annual report, but rather 3. This September, 05-06, 06-07, and 07-08. But of those 3 annual reports, each of them shows a different level of progress. After all, you received your 05-06 money a year before you received this chunk of money. You're probably almost finished. Maybe several of you are already finished spending all of this money, and now you've gone off to start spending some of this money, and then you go off to spend this money. For the most part, the basic operating procedure for us is first money received is the first money expended, right? There's some very interesting reasons why we may deviate from that general rule, but in general, we would expect that you're going to probably have most all of your 05-06 money expended before you've exhausted all your 06-07 money. And so it makes sense then that this year we'll be able to turn in a closeout annual report for this closeout fiscal year. That's the way that they say it in Florida Housing. And then this 06-07 annual report will demonstrate not necessarily that all the money is expended. That's not the rule. It doesn't have to be expended by this point, because you got another 12 months. But instead, the 06-07 annual report will have to show that the money is either all expended or there's some expended and the rest is encumbered. The 06-07 annual report cannot show any unencumbered money, not even a penny. We'll talk about that in a minute. The 07-08 annual report, you have to turn it in, but it's just hanging out there. It might even just show that no money has been touched at all. It might show that, hey, we're busy working on this money, we're busy working on that money, haven't gotten around to this yet. Maybe the only expenses associated with your 07-08 annual report will be admin expenses. That's fine. It's okay to spend admin expenses before you spend all the program dollars, but that's the way that it looks for some communities. Now, I'm mostly talking about our larger jurisdictions that receive larger amounts of SHIP money. Because you and I know that if you get only $350,000, money goes quick, doesn't it? So you might have to look elsewhere for additional sources of money to bring into your community or whatever. But so we do find some communities that when they turn in their annual reports this year, will be able to show that all 3 of them are actually closeout annual reports. All 3 of them show that all that money's been expended. It's kind of a rare thing, but especially for communities that don't receive so much money, they sure can do it. They have a lot of people with a lot of need in their communities, just like you do.